Alright, so I'm going to spend about a minute talking about the Nays. So, the Nays is a series that I've been working on with my brother for the past 20 years. 2022 is actually the 20-year anniversary of it since we started it back in 2002. So, we just have been working on it for a while and it's a lot of fun, and I hope to talk more about this in videos to come. But basically it's a story about these group of kids, and they end up in this place called The Worlds, and they at first just find it because they randomly are exploring and being kids. Then they really like it there, so they keep coming back, and eventually it becomes something much bigger than just a little vacation day home or whatever. Becomes a lot longer than that. So just quickly, an Eventure is what we call like our story arcs. So you'll hear me talking about like the Gek Eventure, the Nays Eventure, all these different ones, and those are just like different story arcs. So kind of on that same page, the way that we do it is we like brainstorm our ideas first in like a TXT file. From there we start to pick out like music that would fit along with these parts, and once we've got that all planned out, we start to type it up in Merc. And then once that is all finished, we open it in Patchu Log Viewer so that we can see it with the colors. And then now what I've been doing is I take that into a Google Doc. Well, so first I have to copy it into like the default Microsoft Word or WordPad or whatever. And then I upload that to Google Drive because otherwise it doesn't retain the colors. And then I go through and start to link to the YouTube videos for the music so I can easily read it. And then I do like a copy edit pass where I make sure there's no like typos, like punctuation and things like that. Just fix all that up. And then I go through and put all the picture files in, which is like drawings that I've done of these Eventures just over time. And eventually I want to do storyboards of all of these. So that's just a basic overview process for right now. So I'm currently working on finishing up putting all of these Eventures into Google Docs. We have a lot of like documents that are sorting out, that we sort all of this stuff and track which ones, as you can see in the background here. So it's just like a way that we've been keeping organized with these like 150 different Eventures that we have. I am basically just taking things from Patchu, putting them in a Google Doc form, and then I'll go through and, edit them and everything. And then I'll have time to be able to start to draw storyboards. So right now I'm in like the later half. We kind of have it separated into 3 parts. The first is like the ones that we really only played with like toys to create the story for. And then now we're going back and rewriting, or actually writing all of those into Eventure format. And then there is like the after timer, because like timer is like the Eventure that was, I guess, like it really changes the mood of the whole story. So we have those ones. And then we've got like the world leader exam and everything after that, because that's another like huge change. So there's kind of like 3 different giant arcs, and then each Eventure is like its own little like mini arc within it, and there's like 100 different things within there. So that's kind of like an overview there. So yesterday I finished organizing all of my Eventures, so they are now in Google Doc form. And then I also planned out the Sid Eventure and the what I am now calling the Koukon Village Eventure. Used to be Combination Village, but changed the focus of that one a little bit during the planning phase. So Then I went ahead and wrote all of the parts that were just my nays in the Sid Eventure. And so that was kind of a setup because that one's right before Koukon Village. So now, today, my plan is to go in and write the entire Koukon Village Eventure since I've got a full day to work on it. So we'll see how that goes. But pretty excited about it to finally have solid plans for these earlier parts since I made up these ideas a long time ago. I just never actually went in and wrote them. It was more like I just had the scenarios in my head and now I'm putting them on paper and improving them from what they were like 15 years ago when I first planned them. So, yep. So I recently converted all of the Eventures into Google Doc form, and I've been writing a bunch of just Eventures that are kind of older, but kind of just never got written, or I kind of wanted to redo some parts and things like that. So let's see, I wrote the Koukon Village Eventure, which used to be called Combination Village, but I kind of changed the focus on that one so that it is more on Koukon Village. They still go to both, but it is one of the Betty by World Eventures where they go to the dream world. And then I also wrote part of the Sid Eventure that just had my nays so that I could just write some parts about like Xandra and Amber doing some stuff. Yeah, so those were the most recent ones I wrote. I've been kind of dedicating Sundays to just like working on the nays a lot. So it'll be either I will write a new part, like a new Eventure, plan out a bunch of Eventures, because that's something I like to do. Just plan out the music, plan out what's going to happen throughout the entire thing. I like to do that before writing. So I'll do that, and then sometimes I'll do a bunch of drawings. But Sunday's kind of my, like, work on projects day. So that has been what I've been doing. Alright, so today is the day that I had just finished my Global Game Jam project. And so I'm just going to talk a little bit about the Time Fabric Island Eventure, because that was actually one of our favorite Eventures that we've written. And so that one, the nays get split up between two different timelines. And the way that we wrote it is that we would just be in a bunch of different channels at the same time. And so each of us were in our own channels and not each other's. And the only way that they could communicate to each other was if they basically created comments on a blog post that we created in Google Docs. So basically sometimes someone would post there, but there would be an alternate timeline version of them. So they might see themselves posting on a blog post, and then that would get them thinking and talking to each other and being like, what's going on here? So that was just really fun because we got to just create that story on the fly. We barely had any plans for it. I think I had like a doc with a few plans or something, but like it was really one that we just kind of like made up as we were going. And it was really spontaneous and fun. So yeah, that was a fun Eventure, and then we basically applied, I guess, the basic story of it to our Global Game Jam project this year. So that was really fun. Obviously, we couldn't create a game together, but not knowing what each other were doing, so we didn't get all that part in there, but it was about different dimensions and different timelines, so the basic theme got there, which was fun. So I've started rewriting the Piko's Concert Eventure, which I did back in 2009, so, over 10 years ago, I first wrote that. That was one of the first ones we wrote, actually. So now we are rewriting it, and it's pretty cool. Just seeing that we've improved our writing and just, connections with characters and just cool stuff like that. I've been doing a lot of stuff with Collie's past, or I guess like her, not past, but more of her goals and her storyline. Been redoing a lot of that, so getting to start to do some of that in this Eventure has been fun. And it kind of just makes me want to keep doing more about her stuff, just to, redo a lot of the stuff that was not very original and great. So I definitely want to start writing more and just, I guess, writing more small scenes that are in depth. Like I just did one today with Piko and Kali. And it was just like, I felt like having more character depth, so I added it. It wasn't really even that planned at the start. Well, I guess I had done one scene that was, there was a conversation that they said they would come back to, so I was like, well, I guess this is a good time to have that in there. It's just at the end of this Eventure. So I just added the scene and wrapped things up a little better, because otherwise it could have got really weird. So yeah, that was fun to write. So I do want to do more of that kind of stuff where I can just add in a character dialogue between two people just to, wrap things up. And I don't know, I like writing character scenes where they're just talking about stuff. So cool, that'll be fun to write. So we'll see if I end up doing more of those, just adding to already finished Eventures or slight redos and things like that. So that'll be fun. So I just finished rewriting some of Timer afterwards, since a lot of that was really old and I had a few new ideas. So that went pretty well. Because part of when I was rewriting the Gek part, I started to just come up with ideas while I was writing that I didn't actually have when I first planned it out. So I always like when that happens, because it's just fun to think of ideas in the moment. So now I'm having kind of a struggle to come up with what the new part that I want to add. It's kind of like about another group that I didn't actually have originally in there. So just trying to come up with what I want to do with that. So we'll see how that goes. Alright, so I've been working on Eventure Trailers, which honestly, my folder that holds all my Eventures was originally named after that. So originally I had just come up with ideas for short trailers, and there were only 2 of them that I had ideas for. But that then made me start to go back and split up the story, because it didn't used to be split by Eventures. And then that made me actually split it up and do that. So I never actually ended up making the trailers. I just made the ideas for them at that point. But so I've made a few little trailers throughout, but now I'm kind of getting the whole idea that I want to actually start doing this. So I did one for the Discovery of the Rebirth Stone Eventure a few years ago, just using storyboards and things. Now I just created one for the Gek Eventure that uses more of the finished art that I made for the Twine that was made in December. So I still have some voice recordings and a few other things I want to do with it, but overall it's a good way for me to really figure out what I want for these. So I had this idea originally, I think it was with the Field Ravens Eventure, where I was like, I'm going to make a trailer for this Eventure and, draw animations or something for it. And then I made the idea for it in Notepad, but I never actually did anything with it. So then I think that turned into its own project of being I gotta split all of these into their own Eventures, which is what I eventually did. So then once I split them all up, that's just kind of how my organization has been ever since. But it all started with just kind of thinking oh, I want to make some trailers. So I'm kind of revisiting that idea many years later. What I'm doing for these trailers instead is kind of just a recap of what the entire story is within that. So memorable quotes and things like that, just to kind of tell the entire Eventure within 5 to 10 minutes. I did it with the Hillside Manor Eventure, and I really liked how that one came out. The storyboards were super rough, but they were expressive and, fun to make. So that was something I did. And then kind of just thinking, I like doing storyboards, so I'm doing a bunch of storyboards of these scenes. So figure why not just turn those into actual trailers. So I still need to do a bunch of sound recordings to go with them, and just kind of
figure that out, but I did just do like a test of the Gaki Venture just to kind of see how it would work in storyboard form. Since I had already like drawn a bunch of those in December for the 20th anniversary of the Nays, I was able to just kind of like use a bunch of storyboards, and they were like fully finished color and everything. Plus like a few like animations and various other things that we've just made, comics, stuff like that. So that was really cool to be able to just take a bunch of existing art and put it into its own story trailer. That's kind of like a new project that I'm working towards. So I've basically just been recording some sound files of the Nays, and I did the first like 2 Eventures, and then I skipped a few to another one that was done, just because I had already finished the storyboards for that one. So I was recording sound files so that I could put those into the Eventure Trailers. And so I'm kind of actually building like a mini sound booth here so that I'm not disrupting neighbors or anyone while I'm recording these sound files, because, you know, it takes a lot of talking in weird voices and fun things like that. So just something that I'm working on, and hopefully I can get all these recorded eventually. That's kind of like just the plan to really continue making these trailers and stuff. So the sounds will be helpful. Yesterday I went back and wrote the Stinky Girl Eventure, which has been one that I've wanted to write for a while because it's Eventure number 4. So it's pretty early in the story, and just one that I felt like we could do a lot more with than what we had originally planned when we were playing with toys. I've been having trouble thinking of ideas for it for a while. So last night I guess 2 nights ago, I just kind of like wrote down a bunch of ideas and finally planned out all the music. And then yesterday I just decided, while it was fresh in my mind, I wanted to go through and write it all. So that was a lot of fun, just getting to finally write one of the earlier parts, because there's a lot of earlier parts that I need to get back to and write, because I guess all of the later parts, I guess they were a lot more original things that I could just kind of make up and didn't want to base on anything. So those kind of have the thing where I want to base it on what happened while we played with the toys, but I also want to make it new and original and fun. So that's kind of just the challenge there. And then their personalities were completely different back then, so just kind of getting used to what everyone acted like is its own challenge sometimes. Last week I wrote the Stinky Girl Eventure, which was one of the first Eventures in the series. And actually the first one that I guess the first one chronologically that I wrote by myself entirely. It just mostly had my characters, and then there were a few of like the family members and stuff that I figured it'd probably just be easier for me to just write it all on my own. But I finally was able to put it all together, and I really connected a lot of stuff from one of our global game jam projects to it, the SOS.wave game, because that kind of took place in a similar timeline and was very related to that Eventure, so I was able to really incorporate a lot of the things that we made up there into this Eventure, so that was really fun to do. And I ended up planning it all out on a Sunday night, and then I had the following Monday off, so I was able to just write it all in one day, so that was really fun. I really like when I can just write an Eventure and just focus on that for a whole day. Right now I'm kind of working on how time travel works in the Nays. So we've had kind of various ways that it works. So the main thing that I've been interested in recently is the time tapes, because I feel like that's the most logical way for like non-time travelers to be able to time travel. So I've been kind of looking at all the Eventures that have time tapes and seeing how I made it work previously so that I could make something more consistent between Eventures. So right now I'm kind of thinking that once they record something on a time tape, that they can just go back to that timeline if they play that part and like record over it at that point. Kind of just figuring out a way for them to be able to go between timelines and periods of time, I guess, as well. So right now there's like also a method where they can splice time tapes together to like send them through portals and things like that. So just kind of trying to figure that out as well. Because I know Clove and Jibu both have time tapes, and that's kind of how they got through time, because they're not like actual time travelers. Like Val and Yaguzi are actual time travelers, so they can just kind of like go through without needing a time tape, but that is kind of an artificial method that anyone can do it. So, and then Megumi's time crystal is also a way that they can go through time as well, artificially. So Megumi is kind of the same as how Jibu and Clove are, where they artificially can travel through time using like a certain object. Similar to Kiporcius's time fridge as well, where all of the Nays can use that as well to get through time. So just kind of figuring out how some of these things work has been fun, and hoping to kind of incorporate some of this into the camping Eventure as well. Just because I'm rewriting that one, and there were a few little areas I wanted to focus on involving the time tape during that as well. So, yeah, that should be fun. We finally finished rewriting the Piko's concert Eventure. It's been a long time because we were writing it for a while, and we kept getting just small moments to be able to write it, but we finally got some time to do that, so that was good. I also rewrote the camping Eventure, so I made that a lot more focused and tied in with the story, with time tapes and things like that I wanted to add. So recently it's been kind of hard to work on things, just a lot going on, and so I was feeling pretty down one of the other weeks just with a lot that was happening. But then what I did was I went back and read through the Shitaka Fireworks Eventure, and it actually lifted my mood and made me feel a lot better. You know, there was a point where I was kind of thinking like, maybe I should stop working on projects and things, because it was just a really, really low point that I was at. But then when I went back and started to read through some of the things that I have written, like, I started to realize, like, why would I do that if this is what I've been doing and what I am enjoying doing? Basically, I guess what I'm saying is that, like, I get really inspired just reading through things that I've written, and it just really gets me in the mood for the Nays again and to start, like, working on things. So that was an uplifting moment in a time where I was very down. So something I've been trying to do more lately is just kind of read through Eventures and just kind of listen to the music, draw some storyboards or just random scenes if I can, but basically just trying to get back into that mindset so I could start to be more productive on the project and just feel better overall. So yeah, not a whole lot of progress right now, but that is something that's kind of just been on my mind and that I kind of just wanted to talk about during these two, because, you know, like I've said, the Nays is like a big part of my life, and it's really just something that makes me feel better when I'm not feeling great. So one of the big things in the Nays is that there are tapes. So we use time tapes, and then also just like communicating between worlds. We used to use tapes when we were kids to record things, and that's just kind of where that origin came from. So something that I've been doing that's kind of related is recording all of my old tapes and turning them into MP3s. So basically I got this thing that's like, it back there, you'll see it. It's something where you can turn cassette tapes into MP3 files by plugging it into USB and using Audacity. So that's something that I have been doing, and it's just kind of been a fun little activity, and kind of related because I used to make the Nays always record things on there, you know, like radio stations and just kind of like their favorite things, and so that's something related to the Nays that I've been doing, and it's just fun to listen to all these old recordings and things, and, you know, it kind of makes me want to make my own of these kind of things again. So I just had a day off from work, so I went ahead and wrote the whole Sid Eventure with my brother. So that one was a bit older of an Eventure, and we hadn't really done a few of them like right before it. So it took a little bit of getting used to figure out what we wanted to do for it, but we kind of tied things together, and I think it ended up being pretty good. There's a few notes I left for changing things later. Like, some of the stuff for the Rovi Eventure is going to be changed a little bit based on some stuff that happened in this one. But yeah, it came out pretty good. And it was good to just finally finish off that one that I had been working on earlier this year. So finally finishing that Eventure and closing off all of the parts we need to do together was good. So last weekend we did a May event. We did the Return to Mr. Marcus World event, which this was our 5th time doing it. We didn't finish it, but we did get a few more fun new activities to do. And it was our first time doing it remotely, so this isn't exactly like related to the story, but it was a fun little activity that we do sometimes with the Nays just to, you know, have fun drawing and fleshing out personalities and things like that. So it was a fun off-topic activity that was still related to the Nays, so sometimes we do those. We've been doing less of them now that we're not living in the same place, but it is just something that's different from just writing an Eventure. So we'll probably do more of those in the future too. I just went back and recorded a bunch of sound clips for the Osyra Eventure. And so with that one, they had used tape recorders to record certain sounds and made blog posts during it. So I just went through and recorded a bunch of sound files of the Nays, and I also just recorded sound effects and things, so I'm pretty excited to kind of put those together, and that'll be fun. Also been working on the Barron Sisters Eventure, which we haven't gotten too far yet, mostly just some of the beginning stuff. That Eventure is pretty short to begin with, but this weekend we just had a lot of disruptions and things, so hoping to try and get that done this weekend, because that one leads into the Timer Eventure, which is a very big turning point in the story, so I'd like us to finally write that part, so hopefully in the weeks to come, maybe we'll get around to writing it, but for now, Barron Sisters has been going well. So we finally finished the Barron Sisters Eventure. It was very choppy. We were a little more busy this weekend, so we just had a few short periods of time that we were able to do it. So it was kind of just like 30 minutes here, an hour here, 10 minutes. So it was a very weird way to be doing an Eventure, but we ended up finally finishing it. And today we only honestly did it for 15 minutes just to finish up the last song. So that was good. So I'm excited for the Timer Eventure next, which we're not sure when we'll do that yet. Maybe next month, maybe the month after, depending on how much time we've got. But yeah, that was fun. Lately, I haven't been working on the Nays specifically project, but I have been working on a game that's kind of related to the Nays. So the game I'm working on is about Combination Village, and just kind of like the history and lots of things related to that area. So while it's not directly related to the Nays, it is kind of like history and world building around it. So Pam Chan is in the game, and then it's kind of like her past and like people that are in her life in her past, but not directly about her. So it's about her cousin, Heidi. So it's kind of like a spin-off, I guess, from the Nays that is kind of related and has some stuff about Pam Chan that goes more in depth about her. So it's kind of related, kind of not, but it's been a fun project that I've been working on. And there's only about a week or so left on the project, so kind of trying to wrap up in a game jam style of getting things done and working on the game. So this was actually a couple weeks ago at this point, but I did finish my game for the indie game making contest. And this was kind of like a side story of the Nays, so that's why I haven't really been talking about it on these videos. But it was about Combination Village, so about Pam Chan, her cousin, and just like all these people from her past. So it was fun to kind of make like a side story that wasn't like directly in the Nays story. Because that way I could do something that was smaller scale and not have to include a lot of the backstory to really understand what was happening. So I did finish that game, and I was able to tie in a lot of things with Pam Chan's past and just like the origins of like her going to Betty by World and having like lucid dreams and just like her mind powers and stuff being strong. So that was just a fun little way to develop that side story, and I really enjoyed working on that game too. So it was just a lot of fun and definitely felt pretty accomplished after making that. So fun little side story or a side trip from the Nays. Yeah, I'm going to be going back into the Nays, though, after this. The other night, I stayed up all night and decided to work on the SN World Festival. So this Eventure was finished, but I decided to rewrite it. Just had some new ideas and things. I didn't actually finish rewriting it, I only got about halfway through. But it was fun, and I think it's turning out better than it was, so that was a fun little way to spend my night before my trip, because I, was staying up all night anyway to go to the airport. So that was just a fun little writing exercise before my trip. But yeah. So in that Eventure, I got to write a lot more about Akuma's past and some of his relations with other Death Association members and things like that. So it was fun to just get that a little more in depth there for things that were missing that I had already written like into his past and everything. I'm kind of like in a transition between projects right now. So I had went on a trip and now I'm on another trip, so it was just kind of like I had a short while to just work on like random projects. So I was trying out like 3D modeling and music and like random stuff, but not really like the Nays related. So I do want to get back into that. So I'm going to try and start reading Eventures again and probably doing some drawings and stuff related to them. Maybe even get back into my game that I've been working on. Like, I stopped last year, the Compass Nays game. Because, yeah, I did work on the Combination Village game earlier, but yeah, I would like to just kind of get back into things. So hopefully, once I'm back, I'll be able to start doing that again. So trying to get back into things, and something that really helps is just watching like animations that I've done already or just reading Eventures and things like that. So I watched through the animation I've been working on over the past few years, the Nays 2084 animation. And it's something that I have been working on. I have like the whole animatic done and everything. It's just not everything is actually animated yet. So just watching that, though, sometimes inspires me to start working on things again. And so I was just thinking of, like, some ideas while watching that, and just kind of, like, listening to music afterwards and thinking of more ideas. Kind of, spoilery things, but just thinking about, like, Gare and, like, his motivations and of how he really wants to be a world leader this whole time, but he's not really the best at the logistical side of things, and that's kind of why Shaw excels in that area more. So just kind of thinking about like the whole idea of how even though he really wants it, maybe it's something he's not the best at, and he's kind of like better at being a leader of the Nays instead of like a world leader. So kind of playing around with some ideas of that, and I'll see where it goes in the future, but just kind of some thoughts and things that I've been brainstorming for like super future plans and end of the Nays kind of stuff. I don't know if it's the end or just later parts, but we'll see how it goes. So I finished rewriting the Rovi Eventure, and I decided to really make it fit into the story parts that it was around more, because I had also added the Channel 6 Eventure a few years ago, and then I had rewritten the SN World Festival. So those were both kind of around the same time in SN World, and I even rearranged the order of some of those. So rewriting the Rovi Eventure was good to kind of fit it into the spot it was in. And I made it have more of an emotional impact, because there's like a big thing that happens during that I feel like it was kind of glossed over in the old one, and I kind of wanted to really focus on it and make it have a bigger impact. And then a few more parts about just, Akuma and the Death Association around that time. And then I also went back and rewrote, or I guess I added a few parts and heavily copy edited the Neo Obelisk Delivery Eventure, because that one I changed how the Rovi one ended, so I had to kind of change how the Nays ended up in the obelisk. So that one required a little bit of rewrites and then also just updating because it was written a long time ago. So just copy edits and small things like that. But those ones were good to redo, kind of, in a way, and just kind of freshen them up because it's been a long time and those were some of the first Eventures. So I just wrote a brand new Eventure called Kali's Motives. And so this one was one that I kind of came up with because I wasn't satisfied with how her whole past, I guess, was revealed through the Return to Sir Dude Eventure. So I decided to kind of like redo that in just like a new Eventure to reveal that part so that it could be a little more involved and resolved and everything. So kind of just one that I came up with a few days ago and planned out, and I just kind of wrote it all in one night because this was another night that I just spent on writing a whole Eventure in one night because I'm pulling another all-nighter for a plane ride. So just something I wanted to do for fun was to write a whole Eventure in one night, and I thought a brand new one would be really cool, especially because I've just been kind of reading some of the ones in this area and wanted to flesh this out a little more. We're rewriting the Timer Eventure, which was one of the biggest turning points in the Nays. So I planned out like the new changes to make to it a few months ago, and it's been one of the ones that I've been wanting us to rewrite because we technically didn't actually write it. It was one of the ones that, like, when we used to play with the toys, it was like the last one of those that was official. So it was before we started writing the stories or doing the Eventures. So it was kind of like that weird middle point. So it was fun to finally actually do it after all this time. And we did still keep true to a few of the things. Like we brought one of the comics out that my brother had drawn and actually tried to implement some of those things that were still fine. So it was fun to kind of, because I had forgotten about some of those things on the plans. I didn't have everything in there, but when we talked about it and we're kind of doing it, it was fun to add all that stuff in there. So we're about halfway done with it. Hopefully this week or next month when we meet next, we'll be able to finish it up because that was fun to finally do it. I've been doing a lot of reading of Eventures, so just a lot of proofreading, and then through that I've been kind of redoing parts. So something recently that I did was actually I completely redid one of the Eventures that was called like the Welcome Home Eventure, and it was them going back to Tag World and just going to some random party. And so I redid that one to be called the Tag World Ceremony Eventure, and I made it a lot more involved, and some parts that previously weren't explained were kind of incorporated a little better. And one of the big things there was that I had Van get introduced to Gare, and those two kind of had like an interaction first before the whole thing where she betrays Paul and Min Min later. So that part made a lot more sense in there. And then I updated some of the parts in the Enter Lowy Eventure, I believe, was the one where she becomes a Nay. So I've been updating a few parts just based on things to make more sense with the story, and that's kind of what I've been doing with these not really rewrites, but with these like proofreading and just updating some little parts as I'm reading through and making it all make more sense together, so I don't have to rewrite an entire Eventure to make something make sense, but more like just updating small parts along the way. I made a lot of progress today. So I guess just over the past few days, I have done all of the storyboards for the Cimc Eventure. I did, like, all the line art is done. And then I did all of the sketches of the Stinky Girl Eventure for the storyboards, and then a few of the line arts. And then I also worked on the Timer Eventure, so we wrote almost all of it. We've only got like 3 songs left, and then it'll be fully done. But we made a lot of progress, and the goal is next week to just find a night and just finish it up. So yeah, that'll be good. Lots of good progress today. So we just finished the Timer Eventure, and it was like the third night that we had done it, but we finally had a time to finish up the last few parts that we were working on. And I really like how it turned out. The end part really came together well, and it was supposed to be like this huge moment in the Nays, and I think the way that we ended it really made it just feel that way too, where it's a big turning point and like just a lot of things are different after that. So I think the way that we ended that worked out really well. And it was one of those Eventures where like we had plans and everything, and then it kind of took a turn and we added more things to it, like a few more connections with how Mean changed at that part. Just more connections with Roar and Punchy. That was something that we like didn't even expect to add in there. And then just like the connection with how a lot of the timer afterwards stuff were like things with Zitka and Vitov, how they ended up. We kind of connected that a lot more than what was originally planned. So it was cool just to get those little connections in there to make the story make more sense. So I really like when that happens. So yeah, the Timer Eventure is finally done and feels good. So I finally finished the Cimc Eventure, the Twine version. So all of the drawings are done. I compiled it into a Twine, and then I also have it all ready to upload to itch.io. And so something that I did with this one too was I made a trailer for the Gek Eventure in there. So it was kind of like a little short recap where I just had like the Gek like narrate what happened on that one, and I showed pictures from the previous Eventure to kind of have a quick like 1 minute recap so people would know like what happened without having to reread the whole previous Eventure. Especially since I know I'm posting these like a year apart. So it could be, if someone did read it, it'd be nice to have that little recap. And then I also made a website that kind of holds all of the Eventures, and it's going to be like a landing page. So I have so far made pages for the Gek Eventure and the Cimc Eventure so that it shows like what characters are there. It's going to have the recap trailer and then links to the Twine and just kind of like a short blurb about it. So, and I'm excited to kind of just have a place for all the Eventures to go once I finish them, because I'm hoping to do more of them more regularly for the Twines going forward, so I can do more than just one a year. So we finished writing the Nays Eventure, which is the third Eventure, and the next one that I was going to do for one of the Twines. So now I can continue that and do that one next year. That's going to be the first one that I do, and hopefully I'll do it before the end of the year. That's kind of the goal. And then after that is the Stinky Girl Eventure, which I've already done like rough storyboards for. I just need to do the line art, clean them up, and do the color and everything. So the first part of that's done, but that leaves me on a better track to complete 2 Eventures for next year's Twines. So that's my goal, and we'll see how it goes. And then, other than that, we also read the Stinky Girl Eventure, so I got to read that one that I wrote back in April. And so it was, we always do this thing, we like read it out loud, and that's just kind of more fun experience to present the whole thing. That way we also find like little errors in like if we have any and things like that, and just kind of more fun that way to present it that way and see how it goes. So that was fun because we haven't really done that in a while. So we're hoping to do more of that when we are meeting more frequently. But yeah. So that concludes my Nay a Week video series, which is actually all one video put together. So this was a fun way for me to just kind of talk about the Nays and what projects I'm working on and things like that. For next year, my thought is that I might do a different thing with videos. Maybe I'll talk about different adventures, the story, things like that. But it's not certain yet, so just stay tuned on my YouTube channel for more video updates and more about my projects and everything. So this was fun. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.